Thanks to the growing number of AKC-regulated herding tests and trials, more herding breed owners can experience firsthand how important the herding experience is to the development of their breeds. Many breeders now want herding titles on individual dogs they choose to use in their breeding program. Taking the herding breeds back to their origin ensures that dogs of tomorrow will faithfully carry on the temperament, soundness, and other essential traits of their ancestors. Herding builds a dog's self-confidence and muscle tone and gives owners great satisfaction as they see their dogs really working for them. City dwellers have also discovered that with some patience and perseverance, the herding instinct can be rekindled in their pets. This sport provides a fun game they and their dogs can play together as a team. The American Kennel Club introduced its herding program in 1989. 6 herding titles, from non-competition tests to herding excellent and herding championships, may be earned. The program allows herding dogs to demonstrate their innate talents at 5 levels. The 2 test classes use a pass-fail system. The 3 trial courses are competitive and scored against a standard of perfection. There are 2 tests. The beginning level is named the herding test. The handler enters the arena with the dog on lead. The dog moves livestock in a fenced area back and forth across the arena and demonstrates the first stages of herding skills and training. The dog takes control of the livestock, moving the stock across the arena to the pylon for the first leg of the exercise. The dog must keep the livestock under control. When the flock reaches the pylon, the dog will turn the stock. It is not necessary to turn around the pylon. The regulations state at or near. This gives the dogs and handlers a great deal of freedom. The livestock may be moved in the open or against the fence. It is the handler's choice. At this beginning level, both the dog and the handler may be excited or nervous. Handlers may become confused. Remembering to breathe and move can become a chore. The judge may help the handler, reminding them to move along. Sometimes it's necessary for the judge to even point the way.
That way, when he approaches, you'll be able to get all the way around. There you go.
Easy. Hey, easy.
The dog must move the livestock up and down the arena 3 times. Once the sheep have completed the 3rd trip and the judge feels the dog has kept the flock under control, the judge will tell the handler to stop the dog. This will be followed by calling the dog off the stock. The customary phrase to use to call a dog off stock is, "That'll do." The dog understands this means to stop working and return to the handler. The handler puts the dog back on lead. The call off the stock is the last exercise, ending the herding test. The judge marks the score sheet with a yes or no in the appropriate box, indicating if all the elements of the test were passed. This dog passed. Pre-trial test class is the 2nd test. It is also a pass or fail class. Dogs entered in this class should demonstrate more control of the livestock and a higher degree of training. The dog moves the stock away from the drop area. Sheep are more easily controlled when moving away from the pens where their friends are being held. The dog applies pressure from almost directly behind the sheep to keep them moving forward. The handler moves along in front of the sheep. This gives the fetching dog a target. He pushes the sheep to the handler. It is the handler's job to walk where she wants the sheep. Handler, sheep, and dog continue along the course through the 2 sets of gates. As they make their turn at the first corner, pressure changes. Now the dog will work to one side to keep the sheep moving forward and from breaking back to the end of the arena. The handler may put the dog on a stay for a short period, demonstrating a controlled pause. This pause may happen anywhere on the course. The handlers choose the time they feel is best for the situation. The next turn puts the pen arena in sight of the sheep. The dog must be alert to keep the sheep from running back to the beginning of the course. They backtrack, following the same path, through the 2 gates to the beginning of the course. Once they clear the 2nd gate, the sheep will want to get back to their friends, making this the most difficult time for the dog to control them. If the dog works off to one side, he will control the forward motion. When he moves behind, the sheep run to the gate. The dog stays while the handler opens the gate and waits until the handler sends him to pen the livestock. Once the gate is closed, the run is completed. The judge then marks the score sheet. Because this is a test, all criteria is marked with a yes or no. the same as in the herding test. In both the herding test and the pre-trial test, 2 qualifying scores from 2 different judges earn the dog's test titles. The letters HT or PT follow the dog's name when he has earned these titles. Herding trials are competitive events that are scored by a judge. There are 3 courses, A, B, and C. Owners may enter their dog on any course or combination of courses. At this time, titles earned are not course-specific. Each course has 3 levels, started, intermediate, and advanced. Dogs must earn 3 qualifying scores under 3 different judges to earn herding titles. Dogs earning a started title will add the letters HS following their registered name. An HI indicates a dog has earned an intermediate title. The advanced dog earns the letters HX when its title is awarded. Following earning an HX, dogs are encouraged to continue competing in the herding program to earn their herding championship. This prestigious award requires compiling a total of 15 points. Dogs must have 2 first places, 1 carrying 3 points or more. As with all AKC championships, this title is placed in front of the dog's name. HC indicates a dog is a herding champion. In addition to 3 courses and 3 levels, there are 3 types of stock. Sheep, ducks, and cattle are normally used in herding events. Many dogs work all 3 types of livestock. Their titles may have been earned on a combination of different livestock. AKC titles do not indicate the type of stock on which they were earned. On all 3 courses, a perfect score is 100. Each exercise of the course has a score value depending on its degree of difficulty. A passing score is 60 with at least 50% completion of each exercise. The judge will deduct points when the dog or handler make herding errors.
1 offline, 4 missed obstacle, 1 rushing.
The trial courses. Each AKC trial course represents a different type of work in different situations. The course most owners choose to compete on is often determined by availability of instructors. Most instructors are course specific. You will find more instructors teaching how to train for Course A. Course A is an all-around farm or ranch course designed to demonstrate the herding dog's versatility in an arena. The run begins with an outrun, lift, and fetch. Our handler positions the dog for the outrun. The dog is sent at the judge's signal and time begins. The dog runs as wide as necessary to keep from moving the stock while traveling to the opposite side of the livestock from the handler. Because the arena is a confined area, it isn't always possible for the dog to get to the other side without moving the flock. Many factors come into play, one of which is the dog's inherent power. Power is the inner strength the dog has that affects the livestock. Dogs learn to make their power work for them. The strong dog may slow its pace or look away from the stock to become less assertive. A dog lacking in power may compensate for it with speed or bark. In the small arena, the less powerful dog may enjoy an advantage because he isn't as threatening to the stock at as great a distance. Now, this dog has reached the proper point. He puts the stock into motion, which is termed the lift. Remember, the stock must stay within a 12-foot path. When the stock begin to move, they should head in a straight line to the handler's post and remain on the path. When they move off the path, it is called offline. The degree and distance the livestock travel offline will determine the amount of points the judge will deduct. The turn around the handler's post is tricky. The handler's presence exerts pressure on the stock. Or in the case of stock used a lot for training, the stock may feel safe next to the handler and may be difficult to push away. The handler may select to push the stock wide at the handler's post, offline, taking a point penalty rather than have the stock stuck to his body. The Y chute's mouth is 12 feet wide, narrowing to 4 feet for the alleyway. When the stock missed the chutes, points are lost. The judge will deduct up to 1 point per head for a missed obstacle. Designed to look like a blind passageway, the Z chute's mouth is also 12 feet wide. When the livestock approach it, all they see is an opening, then a fence. The dog must put more pressure on the woolies to make them enter and pass through the turns. Stopping in the obstacle loses points. The handler, by his presence, can assist the dog somewhat when the stock are put into the hold exam pen. The dog should hold the stock in the pen. The hold can be up to 1 minute at the judge's discretion. The handler may feel like a lifetime has passed before the judge finally signals the hold is complete. When the livestock have exited the pen, the dog begins the most challenging part of the course. The sheep want to go home. The exit gate is in sight and they know where their friends are waiting. Now the dog must hold the sheep against the fence to a marker, a number 4, hanging on the fence. Lifting the sheep off the fence exactly right is a matter of timing and takes a lot of practice. There's plenty of room for error. With some sheep, if the dog is fast, he can slip between the fence and the sheep to take them off the fence. The sheep really want to run for home. The dog must get to a side balance point before the sheep rush off to the pen gate. If they do escape to the pen gate, the center line obstacle has been missed for substantial point loss. This dog crossing in front of the flock creates a touchy situation also. The sheep may turn, heading back to the hold exam pen. This is called retreating and is judged similar to offline by the degree and distance traveled backward on the course. Once the lift has been made, the dog must side balance to keep the stock inside the course lines during the center line gate exercise. At the same time, he must exert enough pressure to keep them moving forward through the panels, crossing the arena to the number 5. Too much pressure, and they move down the arena. Too little, and they pass above the center line gate. Either error will cause the sheep to miss the panel gates. This is a point loss of up to 1 point per head of stock. Handlers hot-footed to the gate as soon as the flock reach the 5. The run is almost over. The livestock want to leave the arena to join their buddies. The most difficult part of this exercise is positioning the dog to keep the stock off the gate while it is being opened. If the sheep slip past the dog, up to 3 points may be lost. The handler closes the gate and takes the first relaxed breath since entering the arena. Scores are added, subtracted. At last they are tallied and posted for all to see. Sometimes it's just one of those days when the handler and dog couldn't control the sheep sufficiently to earn a qualifying score. It's back to the training arena. Fellow contestants share training ideas and trialing techniques in hopes their friends will pass the next time out. Everyone is disappointed when a score is posted that is in the 70s or 80s, but non-qualifying because more than half the points were lost on one exercise. Smiles and congratulations are conveyed when a dog earns a qualifying score. Wide open space is the background for Course B, an open field trial. Here, the dog demonstrates its ability to control and move livestock in an extended area. The outrun began when the dog left the handler's side. The dog doesn't want to disturb the flock before reaching the other side of the sheep, called the top of the outrun. The dog runs as far off the sheep as necessary to avoid letting them feel his power. He wants them to stay where they are until he is in the correct position to move them in a straight line to the handler. The critical moment when the dog puts the sheep into motion is termed the lift. It sets the mood for the entire run. The lift should be quiet and smooth, with the dog taking control of the sheep while not frightening them. A poor lift that gets the adrenaline running through the sheep system is detrimental to the run. It can take up to 20 minutes for sheep's adrenaline level to return to normal. A frightened sheep is far more difficult to handle. Since a run can take no longer than 12 minutes in the advanced class, it's essential the dog does it just right. Moving the sheep to the handler following the lift is called the fetch. The sheep must be controlled and moved in as straight a line as possible to the handler's post. The dog can use the handler as a target. When sheep are being moved properly, they are said to flow like a slow-moving river. Follow the flow as the sheep turn the handler's post, continuing on to the next part of the course, the drive. The drive is difficult. Without the target of the handler, which the fetch offers, the drive requires more assistance from the handler. The handler gives directions to line the sheep up with the first gate. Each weave, zigzag, reversal on course, and stop will cost points. The handler's eyesight and depth perception is put to the test when the sheep approach the first gate. While this portion is still scored as the drive on the score sheet, it is termed the cross drive. The judge takes points off when he isn't seeing the sides of the sheep. Seeing the face or rear end of the woolies means the sheep are not traveling in a straight line to the next gate. The handler must read the sheep carefully to guide the dog in the proper position to keep the sheep moving on the desired path. When the sheep move offline, it is far more desirable to turn them immediately back onto the course line than to guide them back gradually. The longer the sheep are offline, the greater the point penalty. The second gate requires the same good eyesight as the first. It is the handler's responsibility to correctly place the dog. The turn at the panels occurs once the sheep have passed through the panel opening. The dog must contain the flock within the 21-foot corridor during the turn to receive the best possible score. More than one handler has misjudged the speed and distance, commanding the dog to turn the sheep too soon or allowing the sheep to pass too deeply up the course for a loss of points. A missed gate cannot be retried. The line to the penning area is easier. Our handler has been allowed to leave the post and hurries to the pen. The dog once again has a target, the handler, to move the sheep toward. Penning in the open demands equal teamwork. The handler should keep the sheep from passing the end of the gate while holding onto a 6-foot rope attached to the gate. The dog must apply enough pressure on the sheep to make them enter the pen. Moving the sheep off to one side of the pen is a minor deduction. Allowing the sheep to circle the pen can cost up to 1 point per head. The sheep must be in the pen with the gate closed before the exercise ends. The last exercise again depends on good teamwork. In what's called a shed, sheep must be divided from the group and held away. The dog and handler work together to line out the sheep. Getting everything right, sheep, dog, and handler in the correct position, takes time. Too much pressure from the dog and the sheep move off. The handler has to make a small opening that he directs the dog to come through. The dog rushes through. The dog swiftly moves into a position to keep the sheep from rejoining the group.
That's a shed.
Course C, the thinking dog's forte. This course rewards the dog's ability to think, reason, and problem solve. The dog that works independently of the handler, correctly guiding the flock throughout the entire course, receives the best score. This course encourages self-reliance and demands the dog work on its own initiative. Unlike the other courses, there is no set pattern to Course C. It must include all the exercises but may vary from event to event. The scoring and time begin when the gate opens. The dog begins its job by taking the sheep from the small pen. This first encounter between sheep and dog sets the stage for the entire run. It is essential that the dog not unnecessarily disturb the sheep. The dog represents authority, combined with an attitude that convinces the sheep to both trust and respect him. Ideally, the dog moves the sheep to the side of the pen in front of the gate. The dog applies side pressure on the flock to string them out into a column, thus keeping the sheep from rushing the gate as one group. This type of exit protects both the sheep and the fence from damage. As the flock approaches the bridge, the handler calls the dog to one side to keep the sheep on the bridge. The sheep should never be allowed to swim the pretend stream. This is called drowning the sheep, and as you can imagine, is heavily penalized. The dog, too, must use the bridge. While our dog works back and forth protecting and guiding the sheep on one side of the road, the handler must keep his eye on the other. Rascally sheep will step off the road on the unprotected side for a bite or two. The alert handler commands the dog to change sides, herding the sheep back onto the road. Now this dog is putting the sheep onto the wide graze area. The graze can be up to 10 minutes. It is a peaceful time for the sheep and the spectator. For the handler, it can seem like hours waiting for the judge to indicate it is time to move out onto the narrow road to continue with the course exercises. Once in the graze, the handler's job consists of little more than watching. Few verbal commands are necessary or allowed in the graze. Watch as our dog takes up the appropriate positions to keep the sheep inside the designated area. We are witnessing instinct at work. He knows exactly where to be and when. He is keeping a watchful eye on the flock while patrolling the furrows. The confident and smooth gait is not disturbing to the flock. They eat in relaxed comfort. This dog watches and reads his flock, protecting the adjoining fields from hungry mouths. With alert watchfulness and an innate ability to read the sheep, he positions himself to keep the sheep on the road.
This is my placement.
The intermediate and advanced classes must demonstrate the dog's obedience during the graze in the exercise named placement before the flock. The handler sends the dog around the flock to the head. While the dog gets into position, we'll talk about the practical use of this exercise. It is used to position the flock in various parts of a grazing area. This ensures the sheep will eat all the grass in a grazing location, not just the best. The handler stops the dog once he has reached the right place along the furrow. The handler gives the dog a command to enter the graze area. With 2 more stop commands, the dog will be told to approach the sheep. These stops are normally a standing stop and must be instantaneous, with no creeping forward. to achieve the perfect score. The handler times the last stop to coincide with the dog making contact with the flock. In so doing, he turns the flock. Once the flock is turned, the dog is told to return to the furrow and resume his job of keeping the sheep within its boundaries. He must exit on the same side of the graze that he entered. Guiding the sheep over the narrow road, which may be as long as 800 yards, provides an opportunity to see how the dog thinks and demonstrates its natural instinct. The AKC herding regulations require the dog to work on its own initiative. Constant commands from the handler will cause a substantial loss of points. The dog's job is to keep the sheep on the road moving in a smooth flow. No laggers allowed. More importantly, the sheep must not move off the road to graze along the way. This is a demanding task, for the flock is always on the lookout for that tender blade of grass or succulent spot of clover. If the sheep leave the road, the dog must put them back where they belong. Before approaching a corner, the handler calls the dog to stand pick. This action keeps the sheep from cutting the corner, trampling, or nibbling on the grass. The dog stands quietly, allowing the sheep to pass while firmly indicating they must stay on the road. No shortcuts allowed. The handler brings the dog to the front of the flock to stop its forward motion as they approach the traffic road. Remember your mom saying, "Look both ways before crossing the street." The pause gives the handler a chance to do just that before moving the flock onto the traffic road. The dog remains in position to keep the sheep from following the handler as he steps away from the flock to check for traffic. Once the handler is sure there are no cars coming, he commands the dog to put the flock back into motion. As the flock moves along the road, a car will pass. The dog must have authority over the flock, moving them to the side of the road for the vehicle to pass. He works between the car and the sheep to ensure no one steps out of line into the path of the car. At last, up to 45 minutes later, sheep, handler, and dog arrive back at the pen from which this run originated. The dog protects one side while the handler protects the other, ensuring the sheep enter into the pen. The gate is closed, and so concludes this run. Both dog and handler feel they've done a good job. They leave the course knowing their teamwork has earned a qualifying score. It is a great time to take your dog to livestock. It is time to explore his mind and body, his instinct and knowledge, carrying both of you to the past, the origin from which he was bred. For more information about the herding program and detailed regulations, write to the American Kennel Club, Performance Events, 5580 Centerview Drive, Raleigh, North Carolina, 27606-3390. And look for us on the web at www.akc.org.